I think we just witnessed a rather strange PMQs. It's divided opinion, although I suppose PMQs always does. Marion writes, all this sensibleness is almost bizarre. That was 8 minutes in, so not necessarily the case that the sensibleness was sustained, Marion, but I really take your point. Becky, meanwhile, asks, what is going on at PMQs today, which is similar to the position that Natasha and I found ourselves in while listening to it. And Callum says Starmer really does like his yes-no answers, doesn't he? It's quite refreshing. And that idea of him simply saying that is not the case or that is not true and sitting down again. I can't remember the last time I saw something like that at PMQs. There was something odd about, we talked about energy and dynamics, didn't we, before it opened. I've never quite seen an energy like that before at PMQs.
Yeah, it's odd. And if if you're Rishi Sunak and you might be thinking about your legacy building in your final Prime Minister's questions before you step down, this wouldn't be like, China is not something I feel that he would go back and say I'm particularly strong on. It's not exactly a record that I think, he's got a lot to say on. But nonetheless, quite a lot of probing questions about sort of what the government's attitude to China was. We're told that David Lammy is expected to go to China potentially next week. Rachel Reeves planning a visit next year. I can't help feeling, though, that I think Rishi Sunak missed a few, open goals there, really, to talk about, taxes, winter fuel, the budget, national insurance, inflation. Some of the things that I think he would be on the front foot on. But he clearly,
Could it be, and I'm just spitballing here, but could it be that these are the issues that he thinks are really important rather than the issues that are going to get the loudest cheers from his backbenchers? Now that he's on the home straight, he thinks China is a really big deal. And he worries that Labour, like plenty of members of previous Conservative administrations, are not. And again, I said nice things about Gavin Williamson earlier. I'm now about to say something nice about Ian Duncan Smith.
Gosh, are you feeling all right?
Well, you can rewind on Global Player, but Duncan Smith has kind of led the field, or been very, very robust and clear on China, up to and including the case of Jimmy Lai. Maybe Sunak is persuaded that this is where the national interest lies, or at least where the national, His Majesty's opposition should be highlighting the national interest. It could be not mysterious at all. Potentially,
but you'd like to, if in a political sense, and this is what people say when they say that maybe Rishi Sunak wasn't as political as he could have been. If I were in his team advising him, I might say, well, actually, former Prime Minister, I've just done what you just berated Keir Starmer for doing. Rishi Sunak, you have this legacy on Ukraine. Like, why would you not think that was a stronger topic to go on if you want to go on a foreign issue of a sort of unity with a lot of cross-party consensus? Why not go on that? But he's clearly looking for something to slightly wrong foot Keir Starmer on. And I think it's fair to say that Keir Starmer was caught a little bit on the back foot there. He had no answers prepared on really anything, apart from that one critical question, which they did start with, talking about this new system of registration for foreign influence on states, which Rishi Sunak seemed adamant that the government had at least paused or potentially scrapped. Keir Starmer said, no, absolutely not the case.
Well, the truth will out probably in the course of the next 20 minutes, actually. Speaking about dividing opinion, Paul writes, I like Keir's answering technique. It's brilliant, direct and good to see. While Fraser writes, you just heard what a rabbit in the headlights sounds like. Starmer unsure and flat-footed. Poor answers to Sunak. I'm a Starmer supporter. He must do better. He sounded unprepared. They can both
he was unprepared on that issue.
They can both be right, actually, can't they? I mean, he was unprepared on that issue because he doesn't really think it's an issue, I think.
No, and answers are forthcoming on China, I think, for the Labour Party. It's very clear that they have wanted to shift the government's position on it. I didn't see people like David Cameron getting ready to prepare to fly to China 6 months ago. This is a definite shift in the government's position. The Labour position is that they want to collaborate with China on things like trade, on things like climate change, but insisting that they are clear-eyed on the risks that China pose. And, and
the atrocities that China has committed.
Of course.
It kind of takes a little bit of the stuffing out of the stronger words on Israel. Massive respect to Ed Davey for bringing the fascists Smotrich and Ben-Gvir into the conversation.
Yep, and a little bit of news that Keir Starmer is considering sanctioning
against them individually, which is something that Cameron supposedly had in his out tray when he was at the Foreign Office. Also, the question of sanctions in 30 days, if more is not done to get aid into Gaza coming from America, a sense of the crumbling of traditional support for every single thing that Benjamin Netanyahu undertakes in the name of the Israeli people. But some people worried, of course, about the timescale. I'd steer back to Jimmy Lai, who whose case I followed quite closely, and I know his son Sebastian, who was in the studio with us just last week. I don't think, and Sebastian has to be incredibly careful what he says because of members of his family who aren't currently banged up in solitary confinement while being desperately ill, like his dad is. But I know that his lawyer, Keenan Gallagher, has come out a little more strongly against David Lammy's perceived inaction on this than they did when they were in the studio with me. I don't think that Keenan would be particularly impressed by Starmer's answer to that question, to the answer to the, well, we will raise this and we will raise that, because really what you do if a British citizen is being held after a meaningless legal process by a deeply oppressive regime, you don't do business with them until your man's been released.
Yeah, but they're saying that's exactly what they're, like I say, talking about doing trade with China, and the idea that the Chancellor could be flying out to China next year will obviously be not good news to the family of Jimmy Lai. And, Starmer called it politically motivated. He did say that China's behaviour is not conducive to peace and stability in the region, and we've seen what's happened with Taiwan and the Straits and the exercises that China is doing this week, which Taiwan have condemned. But he was asked directly by Rishi Sunak, will you condemn this aggression? He wouldn't repeat that word. So I think a light criticism, from Keir Starmer on that one, which will, I think, not please some of the Tory backbenchers, not least the ones that are sanctioned by China. Those 5 of our own MPs that were sanctioned by China.
Including Ian Duncan-Smith, I think.
Including Ian Duncan-Smith.
It's almost like grown up, says Lee in Romford. But actually some support for that suggestion that Sunak may now be dealing with the things that he cares about, rather than, someone put it rather beautifully, Anthony says, oh, that's it, James. Sunak is showing that he is a statesman. He's not going to go down in a flurry of fur and feathers like Boris Johnson did.
He's
it's
had a
not
couple of
quite
years to talk about China, if that's what he wanted to talk about. It's not really something to discuss and bring up at your last but 3 Prime Minister's questions.
And here's a question for Natasha Clark. So Mark Butler writes, it won't be long before the new Tory leader makes it all a circus again.
Well, that's right. We are in this weird in-between phase, and someone described it very neatly to me the other day. We're still in the trailer period for this new Keir Starmer government, and the film's not yet begun. We haven't yet had that budget, and until we do, until we get that budget, until we get a new Tory leader, this is all just a bit of,
Yes.
window dressing in a way,
so
right?
budget plus new Tory leader.
Yeah, it's going to be a really big week, I think.
The kind of second wind of already.
A huge reset for British politics will happen once we have those 2 things in place.